Let me welcome you to the 42nd lecture of online NPTEL course Drilling and Blasting Technology. We are continuing with the cost analysis of drilling and blasting. This is the second lecture of cost analysis of drilling and blasting. So far we have covered the technology of drilling and blasting, the design parameters, blasting results are discussed. In last few lectures we have discussed how to analyze the performance of drilling and blasting, how to calculate the requirement of the number of drill machines are also discussed. In last class we have started how to calculate the cost of unit operations, especially drilling and blasting. So, we are discussing the different cost heads, and in the last class we have already discussed the capital cost head and maintenance cost head, how that will be calculated, that theory behind that, concept behind that are discussed. We have started the operating cost head, how that will be considered. We have seen in the last class we have discussed there are basically three particular part in the operating cost. So, that three particular part is basically the power, consumables and the manpower. So, these three are basically the cost head we have to consider for the operating cost. Among this we have discussed on the power. So, we understand that power is basically depending on the running hours of the machine. So, the total running hour that has to be considered, and the total power consumed that is considered. So, from there for a running mine we can get the average power consumption per unit time, and if we are multiplying with that with the rate we have to pay for the power, that will give us the power cost. Okay, but for not running mines we have to assume this one. So, a big table is given in the last class where the HP based on HP and kilowatt the power consumptions are given. So, this is another formula given by another source where the fuel consumption is given in gallon per hour is equal to 0.00226 into HP divided by the thermal efficiency of the engine. So, considering that the fuel consumptions may be calculated for this particular case. So, somehow power we understand the power consumption is basically the power consumed by the machine. If the machine is working under full load, power consumption will be more. If the machine is operating in under load condition, in that case power consumption will be less, but for a particular period the average power consumption is considered as the power consumption. Okay. So, that part has to be considered here. Now, let us go to the consumables. Consumables are basically those spares or those parts which are consumed with the run of the machine. Basically you can say that the machine will be consumed by its life, but it is not actually consumed, say the frame etcetera is not damaged, it is damaged, but not that significantly really depending on the workings, but some are there which basically consumed as the consumable or basically consumed during the operation. So, there are basically two types of consumables. One is that drill bit, lubricating oil, tire, all this, it is basically corrugated, or you can say this is basically it is basically having the corrosion, or it is basically consumed with the rubbing with the surface etcetera. That is because of the operation of the machine, but some are basically consumed at the source like explosive, then your detonators, these are basically consumed as the consumables. So, there are direct consumables like explosive detonators etcetera, which is consumed immediately, it is diminishes into the power energy and that is utilized. So, those are consumables. Okay. And there are some spares which is gradually wiped out, washed out or basically erased out because of the operation of the machine, that may be the drill bit, that may be the cutting peaks and that may be the grease or may be the lubricating oils, those are providing in onto the day to day basis. So, those are the consumables which depending on the running of the machine. So, their consumption are basically depending on the condition of the operations, but not it is directly consumables, but explosive etcetera it is directly consumables, whatever you are using that will be immediately consumed. Okay. So, this consumption rates are depending on the consumables and that is say explosive is consumed as per the powder factor, tire consumptions as the road condition is there and based on that you check whether the tire is there, that has to be replaced or not. So, that replacement is basically carried out observing the condition of the tire. If the condition of the tire is poor, then only we will go for the replacement of the tire. Similarly, for the drill bit also, for the cutting peaks also, this replacement are carried out based on the conditions. Now, for the consumable, the cost is calculated as the consumption rate with the multiplied with the price of the consumables. Say for drill bit cost, it is the bit price divided by the bit consumption rate. Suppose there is a drill bit which is operating for say 1000 meter of drill hole. Okay. After 1000 meter of drill hole, the bit will be completely wiped and that is why or the bit tips are lost in those or become blunt. In that case the bit has to be replaced. So, after 1000 meter of drilling, the bit will be replaced. The price of the drill bit is say 10,000 rupees. So, it is the 10 rupees per meter is the consumable on the bit consumable price is coming into this. So, it is basically considered as the bit price by bit life. Whereas, for the explosive etcetera, it comes under the rupees per ton, where we give the explosive price in rupees per kg and the yield we get from the blasting by blasting of 1 kg of explosive. So, basically that is the tonnage we are getting per kg of explosive and you know the tonnage per kg of explosive is called powder factor. So, basically the explosive consumption cost is the explosive price divided by the powder factor expressed in terms of ton per kg. So, then the consumable cost for explosive is coming in rupees per ton. Now, the understanding of consumables, placing in this particular consumable group is very problematic. There may be many people may ask why the sub schedule maintenance are, that is also the consumption, why that will not come here. But there are some spare parts or consumables which are included in the breakdown maintenance, because we do not observe its condition, we replace it periodically. Okay. Except breakdown condition, that is replaced, that is not the consumption, but in maintenance also there are some things which are replaced based on its consumption, or assuming that it is life is over, it cannot run more. So, those are basically considered in the maintenance cost, not in the consumables. So, this demarcation is little bit clumsy and that is why this is changing from organization to organization. So, but in my opinion, it is better to keep those things which are replaced in the schedule maintenance like air filter, brake oil, O-ring, those must be kept in the maintenance cost, because this decision is mainly attributed by the concept that these are the parts of schedule maintenance. So, that may be changed there. You may need to change a O-ring in between also, because there may be some leaking, but that is the failure of the O-ring. O-ring is supposed to run up to that particular period, and price of O-ring is also very less, maybe 5 rupees or so. So, that is why this part is basically considered in the maintenance cost, but the grease, lubricating oil, etcetera are considered as the consumables, because they are used in the daily maintenance. Okay. In daily, before starting the shift or once in a daily, all the moving part of the machines are basically grease is provided in all those parts. So, for the smooth running of the machine. So, this grease consumption basically considered as the consumable, because after every shift that grease is being consumed. So, it is frequently it is being used. So, it is considered as the consumable. So, this part should come under the consumable, not in the daily not in the maintenance cost. And there are some big consumable parts like tire, drill bit, cutting picks, those are considered as the consumable in the operating cost. There is another aspect here, that is how we are carrying out the operation. If the operation is the equipment is owned by the mine organization, then this demarcation is anyway not affecting the overall cost of the machine, whether you are placing it in the maintenance or you are placing it in the consumables. But if your equipment is on a higher basis, or your equipment maintenance is in the annual maintenance contract, that is the AMC basis, then these decisions are very important. So, if the machine is on hiring basis, then you have to put this clause that whether the schedule maintenance will be the part of the equipment provider, or the daily maintenance is the part of the equipment provider, or what will be the consumables, because this consumable for small maybe grease it may not be a significant costing, but for the main big consumables like tire, drill bit, you can see the drill bit cost is 10 rupees per meter, it is coming by bit only. So, that is why these are very significant cost. Say dumper tire, those are costing around say 10 lakh rupees or 5 lakh rupees. So, that is a significant costing. So, if this significant costs are there, that must be considered judiciously, and that has to be placed in that particular clause when the AMC contract is basically made or the hiring of equipment is made. So, that is why AMC contract exact demarcation between the consumable and spares included in maintenance should be considered. Of the track, I would like to say you one thing, say many of you may have say this water purification system in your house, and many of you have given that in the AMC, say yearly they are taking 2000 rupees or so for carrying out the maintenance of those water purifying system, or especially you can say RO etcetera. So, in those cases you will find out that basically includes the cartridges that is changing, that has to be changed once in every year, and of some few small part. But if there are some problems related to pumps etcetera, those are not included in that particular AMC, because that is a costly item there. So, that is why whenever those AMC contracts are there, those particular clauses has to be considered, and those pumps etcetera, those are basically of high value, maybe 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, those are not included in that. So, this part is very important, that the clause between the miners and the equipment providers or AMC providers is very important, where the consumables and the spare included in maintenance must be demarcated properly. For existing mines, the maintenance operating cost or the consumable under operating cost is as per actual. For planning, this consumption are considered based on the previous practice. That is this assumption what I was discussing, that 1000 meter is the life of the beat is the assumption from the previous practice we are considering here, but the actually it may be 1200 also, it may be 700 also. So, actually is not known to us, but we are assuming the average on an average basis a beat is giving 1000 meters of drilling. So, this for planning case we have to consider the consumption of the consumables as per our previous experience. So, this is very important, because during planning these assumptions of consumables, say for tire, for drill bits, these are very important. Life of the drill bit is changing from rock to rock. We have already seen that this drilling rate is depending on the bit life also. So, sandstone etcetera, where the your silica mass is there, that means the angular grains are there, consumption of the bit is very high, okay, because of the high abrasivity of the rock. So, those part must be considered if the planning is carried out. Say the experience from a other mine, say a limestone mine or iron ore mine, that cannot be placed as the basis for considering the drill bit consumption in a sandstone mine. So, those part is important, that must be considered with due weightage before the planning of the costing. So, now next part is the manpower cost. This manpower cost basically includes the cost incurred as the salary of the direct employees associated with that particular unit operations. So, if it is a drilling operation, then the drillers and the assistant driller, these are the two manpower you can consider for the direct employment on the drill machine. But the consider is what is the salary. Salary means it is not that whatever the month end money the person is getting. Here salary means all the cost because of that person coming onto the company. It is the salary plus quarters plus clothing plus free canteens plus superannuation benefits, insurance, all these hospital facilities, all this must be considered for this considerations of the salary head for this person. Then the next problem is that salary is different from person to person. Say one driller may have, very experienced driller may have different salary, another driller is a new driller may have less salary. So, this is changing on the experience, changing on the position. So, this is different from person to person, in different unit operation it is different. So, it creates a chaos in the organization, because then everyone will ask that I need a low salary person here. So, that is not basically considered. The salary has to be considered as the average salary when these calculations has to be carried out. Okay. Now, salary is different also from the organizational structures, country's economy. Say in India the salary are less, in USA salaries are high, because the manpower availability is here, many manpowers are available here, many people are ready to work. So, labor is very cheap. So, that is why salaries are less. The organizational structure, we have to see what is the organizational structure. If it is a small company, it may not afford a good salary. The condition of the company is also very important, where the salary may be given, but the perks where the bonuses has to be given or not, other medical benefits, insurance benefit, those things are changing on the organizational structures. And also the quality of the job is also very important, whether it is a assistant driller or it is the driller or he is the helper, all these the position are very important when the salary is we are considering. But the salary is different from person to person, then it will be different from across the unit operations, and this disparity has to be considered, and that is why a average salary concept has come, where the discrepancy in the manpower cost and its distribution across the unit operations has to be removed. Basically, the discrepancy on manpower distribution across the unit operations should be removed, and it is essentially required that the salary head for all direct workers are to be rationalized. Okay. So, this rationalization is carried out and a term has generated earning per man shift. This is a very unique term generally used in Indian mining condition, not very common for other industries. This earning per man shift concept is not very common for other industries, but in mining industry this earning per man shift is very common and it is commonly accepted across the different unit operations and very useful also. So, this earning per man shift is calculated using this formula, where the total salary head of the workers in the company, that is the direct employment, those operators, assistant operators, helpers, those who are directly engaged with that with those particular unit operations, those are considered here, and total man shift which is achieved. That means, suppose there is a person who was asked to work say for 300 days in that year, but he has taken some leave, he was absent, he has actually worked 270 shift in that 270 days. So, every day one shift, considering that he has worked for 270 shift in that particular year. So, working days may be different, but a particular person may be working at that particular mine for a number of days only. So, that number of shifts are calculated. So, basically number of shift is the summation of the number of shift work in the year by each individual. So, X has worked for 250 shift, Y has worked for 265 shift, Z has worked for 295 shift. So, we have to go for summation of all these things to get the total number of shift in that particular year. Similarly, we take the total salary head, say suppose for this in that year he has earned say rupees 8 lakhs, then this person has rupees 10 lakhs, this person has earned rupees 15 lakhs. So, like that way this is their salary earning and this is considered as the salary head, the summation of this is considered as the salary head of that particular mine. So, after getting this, by dividing this, we basically get the earning per man shift, that is the cost of manpower per shift of operations. He may be anyone, but this person may be anyone, but by engaging a person, the average salary which or average manpower cost which incurred by the mine authority is the EMS. So, that is the rationalization of the manpower cost is carried out in the mine in terms of EMS. So, generally this EMS is calculated considerations of the over the year of the operations, and salary head is considered only for the direct employees across the unit operations, and total number of man shift operation is counted for that particular year. So, if anyone is considering say big public sector organizations, mining operations which are working here, their EMS is coming almost close to 4,000 rupees per shift. So, engaging one man in the for one shift is cost to the company of 4,000 rupees. So, that is the considerations carried out. There may be other contractual workers. So, that engagement also judiciously should be considered, that how their engagements are made and how their payments are considered. So, if they are also direct employment, then also their payment has to be considered as the direct employment payment. So, now the manpower cost for a particular unit operation is calculated based on the number of worker, that is in the directly engaged in that particular operation, multiplied with the EMS will give the manpower cost, but be very careful, this manpower cost is given in rupees per shift. Okay. So, now as the manpower cost given in rupees per shift and the other cost which we are getting in terms of the rupees per measurement of that operation, say if it is drill, then it is in meter, if it is in excavator, then it is in rupees per ton, then if it is explosive, then it is rupees per ton. So, that means we have to convert that rupees per shift to the rupees per ton or rupees per meter or rupees per meter cube. So, these are the unit which we want to have the salary cost. So, for that we have to convert this manpower cost into the rupees per ton. So, we have to engage multiplied the same with the yield per shift. So, this yield per shift will basically give us the conversion of the manpower cost from rupees per shift to the rupees per ton. So, by this way we calculate the manpower cost. Next cost head is the overhead cost. Overhead cost basically includes the cost incurred for the other supportive works, which is not directly related to that unit operation. That means, it is not directly operation of the drill machine, but these operations this cost cannot be avoided. So, these are the cost which is not related to that unit operation or the operation of the mine, but this cost you cannot be avoided, like say placing the signboards, notice boards, giving the signaling systems, then the office expenditures. Say you must have to keep a timekeeper for taking the attendance. So, all these costs are essentially required and you cannot avoid it, but it is not having any direct impact on the operation. So, whether your timekeeper is coming to take attendance is not important and it is not having any role on the performance of the drill machine, okay, or performance of the blasting. So, that is independent, but this cost you cannot avoid. So, these costs are considered as the overhead cost, and this overhead cost are office expenditures, supportive manpower, clerks, etc., head office. If there is another head office that has to be maintained, this head office expenditures are also coming from this. Any other miscellaneous like signboard, signaling system, recreation, tea, etc., those are also coming in this overhead cost, which cannot be avoided. So, for an existing mines we may calculate it from the cost sheet of the company, but generally we consider it as it is a percentage of the overall cost, because otherwise the other cost will become very high, there cannot be any check on that. So, basically this overhead cost are the cost which are given to the head office or the others miscellaneous cost head, that is basically that allocations of that money is basically coming from the calculation of this unit operation overhead cost. So, generally a percentage of capital cost or a percentage of subtotal, that is the capital plus maintenance plus operating cost is considered as the overhead cost. Generally I prefer to use the 10% of the summation of capital plus maintenance plus operating. So, the summation of these three cost may be considered as a basis of calculating the overhead cost. This 10% because there must be a check, the overhead cost should not be significantly high. So, based on that there is a check on this, considering that it is considered. Otherwise, there may be other considerations, examples where the overhead cost can be considered. It is very important, if the calculation is carried out for the outsourcing price of that particular unit operation, then also this overhead cost must be considered, because the agency which is engaged as the contractor should have the right to have those clerks, signboards, and that is essentially required. So, that is why the overhead cost must be calculated for the subcontractor work also. The final part, which is not required for the departmental cost analysis, but must be included for the operations which are supposed to be outsourced, that is the contractor profits. It is believed that after carrying out this operation, contractor should have some profit, otherwise he will not, it is not easy for him to carry out the work. So, before that, let us understand some part related to how the outsourcing is carried out. Basically, outsourcing is carried out in tender basis or limited tender basis, or nowadays after this internet etc., we go for e-tendering instead of that pen and paper tendering. And the most modern concept is that instead of tendering, the tender notice is given, but we ask for the auctioning, that the buyers has to come and they have to give the auction how low, what low price they will offer for doing that job. Suppose drilling operation we are given. So, we ask that this is the drilling operation has to be carried out, 160 mm dia drill, 10 meter bench, 12 meter hole, drilling rate, expected drilling rate 20 meter per hour. So, what will be your drilling price, and the organizations has to come for tendering of that. So, here generally we go for auctioning, we say the what is the price they are telling. So, some organization may tell we will do it in 20 rupees per meter, another will tell no, we will do it in 19 rupees per meter. So, this is called auctioning. The lowest price has to be accepted by the authority and the job will be awarded to them. Now, it is also nowadays this auctioning has go to the reverse auctioning. So, first the based on the auction their offer, the some 3-4 authorities are asked, then the online auctioning is carried out, where no one knows, one buyer does not know about the other buyer, and from where the other buyer is calling, and they are basically from the other buyer they are basically asking for the price. So, only the lowest price is available to them. So, like this way reverse auctioning is carried out, and this basically force this e-reverse auctioning, which is now basically practiced, that is basically force the very low price to be quoted for that unit operations. So, this is actually a situation, reverse auctioning basically a situation where the parent organization, that means the seller, that the mining organization, if it is outsourcing, the outsourcing organization, that is the buyer is always at loss, and he is plunged himself into a strict financial condition. That is occurred because the buyer is in a serious pressure to have the job, because his machine is idle, his manpower is idle, and he needs a next job. He does not have any permanent job to do. So, he needs to have that job, and with that consequence he is basically opting for that job at a low price, with sacrificing his profit also. But this basically actually creating problem to the parent organization, because the moment the buyer is opting for a price which is impossible, then the moment he will carry on the execution of that work, he will neglect many other things, especially the quality part, safety part, security part, maintenance of the equipment part. All these which are not directly related to the production will be basically neglected by the outsourcing organization, and that may create deep problem in the mine. So, outsourcing for that case, the mine authority may be very careful on the price. So, it is actually not only the outsourcing agency, but the mine authority must find out the way to avoid desperate attempt to acquire the job, and there must be a cost calculation prior to auctioning and tendering, so that the impossible price should not be quoted there. And outsource organization must engage themselves at the versatile operation, so that recession at any place can be overcome by the other place. So, those things very important. Loss at one project may be overcome with the profit of the other project. So, that part must be considered for the outsourcing agency, and outsourcing agency must prepare a feasibility report prior to commencement of the work, but after the post auction. But that part is also essential for the mining authority. They must ask that feasibility report how the work can be carried out on that particular price. So, the contractor profit is basically a percentage of the subtotal, and here that consideration is that contractor must consider interest and depreciation in its capital cost, because the amortization of his capital is important. It is not accepted that he has invested some money procuring the capital, and at the end of the project he will does not have that capital with him. Okay. So, that capital, interest and the depreciation, that has to be considered by the contractor. Above that, he must consider the profit which has to be carried out. So, profit is basically calculated based on the subtotal of the percentage of subtotal of the all cost. Basically, for any good rate of return, 10% is considered as the rate of return should be there. So, this is basically the theory behind the cost calculations. We will calculate the cost for that given problem, that is the surface drilling. Gradually, we will calculate the cost for the underground drilling also, and for blasting also in the coming lectures. Thank you.